Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit the subscribe button. So, what some are calling the QB1 Bowl, number one overall pick bowl, head coach getting fired bowl, the 1-5 Cleveland Browns take on the 1-5 Miami Dolphins this weekend. It should be pretty easy to find a Dolphins fan in the UK. There seems to be quite a lot of them. But I've got the two best guys that I know. Matthew, Lee, thank you so much for coming on, talk about the Dolphins. Before we get into anything, how are you both doing on this fine Friday in the UK?
Yeah, good, mate. Really, really good. Thanks for inviting us on to talk about the game and the season. So, yeah, looking forward to this. It's a rare day off for me, so this is a good start to the day.
Yeah, same, mate. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here. It's also the first lefty QB bowl as well. First time two lefties have faced off, I believe, in like 19 years. So that's another one we can say. Yep.
Also a rare day off for me as well, Lee. So what better way to spend your day off work than talking about our terrible football teams? I couldn't think of anything better to do it. As you said, Matthew, I mean, I think this is the first time ever that two Hawaiian lefties have gone up against each other. As you said, first time in a long time that just two lefty quarterbacks have gone up against each other. So that is at least something we can talk about, going into this game. But before we get into the game, obviously the Dolphin season has not gone as many Dolphins fans probably would have expected or hoped, shall we say. Maybe some of them did expect it with the cracks, throughout the roster. But what were your expectations going into this season, and where are you at now in terms of where those expectations are?
I'll jump in, guys, if I can. I wrote an extensive piece for Join the Huddle outlining what the expectations were, which was kind of, and I think this was more heart-ruling head, a 10-11 win season, because I did think that the offense could score 30 points a game if possible, and always knowing that the D was going to be atrocious, just because the quality of player wasn't there, and the best players that we had were coming back from injury in JP and Chubb. So I always knew it was going to be a struggle. I guess on one side of the brain where you see the best of things, maybe they're 4 plays away from having 4 wins.
Yeah. You
look at A-Shane foot out of bounds versus the Pats. Anyone that could have tackled Bryant Young on 4th and 4 when we were 17-0 up, they don't score then, even though it was only a field goal. If they don't score there, I think that game's over. I think we go and score again and it's done. Last week, well, what can we say about last week? Other than, again, if JP makes the tackle, I think we win that game.
Yeah.
And, if Steeler doesn't hit the punter at 21-21 against the Bills, who knows? Now, I don't think the Bills are the team that everybody probably thought they were, just judging on the season to date. But, maybe that's clutching at straws and maybe it isn't. And I'll be interested to hear both your opinions on that. But from my perspective, this is a poor teams find ways to lose.
Yeah.
Because they haven't got the mentality, they haven't got that fortitude, they haven't had the coaching, and they find a way to lose. And I think this applies a little bit to Cleveland as well. So it will be really interesting from that perspective if, as expected, the weather is horrific on Sunday and there's 50 to 60 mile an hour winds. If you throw the ball more than 3 times that game, I think your head coach might be in an amount of trouble, because you should be running that ball until we cry. So, and that's a little highlight into how I think the game may go. But yeah, season-wise, it could have been better. 3-3 would probably be about right. But yeah, you can easily see why we're 1-5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lee. I had quite a bit of hope going into the season. I had about 10 wins as well. And you took the words right out of my mouth. Bad teams find ways to lose games, and you just rolled them off. You can go back to so many individual moments in those games, and we found ways to lose them. I think it just speaks for really the tenure of the GM and the coach. The team's got progressively worse year on year. and we've masked deficiencies with the O-line last year. Tua was going out, and you've seen how poorly constructed the team was then. And he comes back in, and we win some games. And like, okay, maybe we can go again. But the team is just, again, we've seen this year. We thought the defense was going to be bad, but wow, we didn't think it was going to be this bad. I'm concerned with Quinshon Judkins running that ball on Sunday, and then looking further than that, Bijan Robinson the week after, and Derrick Henry. Oh my God. So yeah, it's just been a poorly constructed team, and I think the quarterback masked some of those issues personally the last couple of years, but I think he was the solution to some of those problems that we had. If he played well, he played damn near perfect, and we would win. If he played well, we might get a result, but he's regressed a little bit. I think he's been sussed out a little bit as well across the league, and unfortunately, I don't think he's no longer the solution. I think it probably comes in the part of the problem as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Overall.
Yeah, I wrote a piece for the Huddle about his mechanics this week, and there's some real serious issues about his mechanics. I mean, if you see him throwing his sailing passes, Waddle's been open 2 or 3 times a game, and he's missed him, and he's not just missing him by a small margin. This is one of the most accurate QBs in NFL history.
Yeah,
he doesn't miss tight windows. I mean, I love the quote that one of the head coaches gave, where most QBs try and hit a door. Tua tries to hit the keyhole, and that's about right. He's incredibly accurate, and he's just not right. You can see it in the way he moves. You can see it in the way he's throwing. Yeah. His elite strength was pre-snap reads, and he's just. And I agree with you. A lot of it is down to what defenses are doing with that too high safety piece, and then they're either having half the field in man or half the field in quarters, or they're making really subtle but very significant changes right on the snap, and it's absolutely killed Mike's scheme. It really has.
Yeah, and he's not found a way to overcome that, which I thought he would, to be honest. I thought you got an offensive genius here, of what we originally thought, and he's just not been able to overcome it, unfortunately, and it's just had a detrimental effect onwards across the organisation.
Yeah, 100%.
I think a lot of Browns fans have a similar view on obviously our head coach being an offensive-minded head coach as well. When you've got an offensive-minded head coach, granted, as you both have pointed out, the defense is the biggest problem in Miami. I don't think you could argue that the offense is the biggest problem, although there are, of course, problems there. But when you have an offensive-minded head coach and you're not getting that output from the offense, obviously even more so on the Browns side, we haven't scored 17 points in a game without Jameis Winston in like 18 games. We can't score points. We can't get first downs, and there's so many deficiencies in the team. You guys can point to the deficiencies in Miami. I can point to the deficiencies, of course, on the Browns offense. But at the end of the day, when you are an offensive-minded head coach, you are expected to at least raise the floor slightly. And I think that's something that, you guys can obviously point out with Mike McDaniel, and what we can point out with Kevin Stefanski. 2 offensive-minded head coaches that aren't getting anything out of their offense, obviously more so for the Browns. But obviously, the Browns this year had a slightly different expectation, shall I say, to the Dolphins. I didn't go into this year expecting a winning record. I went into this year slightly more confident than some Browns fans. I was around that kind of 6-7 win range. But the team basically told the fans that this was a transition year. It's quite rare that you get that kind of thing out of anyone in the organisation. So I think when you put these 2 teams together, it's easier to see why maybe Dolphins fans might be more frustrated, because as you both said, you expected more out of this team. And, you're sat there with the same record as a team who, not to constantly bash on my team, but a team who can't even score points and can't move the ball. And, this is one of the worst offenses in NFL history, and you have the same record as them. So I think that can be so frustrating. I think it's always important to recognise context when you're going into a season. If you're bad, but you expect to be bad, it never feels quite as bad. But the reason I feel sorry for you both from a Dolphins perspective, I mean, I was quite bullish on the Dolphins this year. The last couple of years, I always seem to get more confident about your team than maybe I should. But I looked at the schedule. I looked at, as you said, the players coming back. You still got Tyreek Hill. You still got Jalen Waddle, Devin A-Chain, Tua. I'm not as low on as other people. And as I said, you sat there at 1-5. So, of course, it is disappointing. But finally, before we get on to the game, I mentioned him there, Mike McDaniel. Where are you at with Mike McDaniel? Is it you're done, you're ready to move on, or do you think he has a chance to maybe save his job in the next few weeks or the rest of the season?
I think, I think first off, he will stay the whole of the season. I think the owner loves him, and it's been reported this week that the owner has faith in him. But I just don't see the team winning enough games for the noise not to be really, really loud come the end of the season. I think he will go. I think he probably should as well. 4 seasons, was it 3 playoff appearances, no wins. There's massive question marks about accountability with the team. The offense, like you said, is his baby, and it's just faltering a little bit, I think. But it doesn't matter. If the GM stays, I don't think it matters, because I think you just need it from the top bottom clear out, in my opinion. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, following on from that, I like Mike. I think he's a really different kind of coach. And that first couple of years was sensational. I think it brought more joy and enjoyment than any time than that I've been following the team since Marino was quarterback. Some phenomenal stuff that he put into place there. But he had to win a playoff game. The year we were 4 games clear of Buffalo with 5 games left. That Titans defeat on the Monday night, I think, will live with Dolphin fans forever. Because had they won that game, they'd have won the division, and who knows what would have happened from there. I agree with you. I think he'll stay to the end of the season. Ross loves him. Ross starting to hear some talk now that he's going to give the team to his daughters. They will take over the running of the team. That may even be as close as this off season. It's clear we're not going to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 years now. It needs a kind of cyclical rebuild. Greer can't be anywhere near it. He's had long enough there now to build a winner. He spent an inordinately large amount of money, but he can't seem to fix an O-line to save his life. And it comes to something when you're praying for Liam Eichenberg to get fit. And the talk this week has been really strange. I don't know if you guys have seen it about, Giants and Seahawks in for Waddle and A-Chain respectively. Some talk of JP or Chubb going. But for me, you've got a holy trinity who you cannot touch, which is A-Chain, Waddle and Pat Paul. And maybe Brewer at centre, although he's slightly scheme specific, I think. But I'm not sure outside of that who you wouldn't trade at this point. Get the value in, start to build some picks, start to get some bullets in the gun to look at the next couple of years and bringing in young, hungry, aggressive players and change the culture. I think it has to be done. I think Mike will go on and succeed somewhere else as a highly requested OC somewhere, and I think he'll go on and develop. I think too, if he goes somewhere else behind a really good O-line, and if he fixes those mechanic flaws that I was talking earlier, he could win easily in the NFL. He's not an Allen, he's not a Jackson, but he's certainly good enough from a clean pocket to win your games consistently. So I'm at that rebuild point. I'm at that. It's going to be painful. I'm not sure it'll be as painful as the Saints or someone like that that's going through it. Yeah. But I think it'll be painful for a couple of years, and then we'll come back. But all dependent upon who gets the head coach job and who they bring in as GM. Yeah,
and it's funny you say about Mike McDaniel. You're convinced he'll be successful somewhere else. I pretty much feel exactly the same with Kevin Stefanski. It's got to the point where I've been a big Kevin Stefanski defender over the last few years. A lot of Browns fans have been quick to I don't know if it's the same with the Dolphins, but anytime anything goes bad, it's fire the coach, fire the GM, fire anyone. It just seems to be the natural reaction that a lot of people have. And, I've defended Stefanski quite a lot throughout that because I've found that, he raises the floor of the team. You look at some of the messes that, let's be honest, the GM has put this team into, and he was always able to find a way to kind of raise the floor. Whereas this season is the first year that I think, I can sit here and say he's not raising the floor. Yes, there's problems. We have the worst O-line in the NFL. I don't even think it's a debate. It's one of the worst offensive line situations I've ever seen in the NFL. I mean, we're starting a fifth, sixth string tackle, different combination every single week. But as you said, you can get to that point where I'm convinced that someone will be successful somewhere else, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't get rid of him here. Sometimes you just need a change for the sake of change, whether that's at the head coach position or the GM position. But I'm kind of in the same boat as you guys. If you change the coach, you might as well change it all, because the coach isn't the only reason that the Browns are in the situation they're in. Mike McDaniel's not the only reason that the Dolphins are in the situation they're in. So, you could fire the coach, bring someone else in, and you're still having the exact same roster problems that you're having created under that GM. So I think I'm at the same point as you guys. I mean, I'm not ready to say tear it all down right now, but I'm also not ready to say don't tear it all down right now, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of as neutral as you can be with it. So it will be interesting to see, what happens after this game. I don't think that either coach will get fired on Black Monday. I don't think it's one of those scenarios as much as people want to make it out. I'm the same with you, Matthew. I think if they do it, they'll just do it at the end of the season. Doesn't really seem... I just don't see the benefit. The only benefit I see of sacking a coach during a season is if, A, you've got a rookie quarterback that you're worried the development of is being stunted by that coach, or 2, you were a team that is actually supposed to be contending. Let's take the Ravens right now, and they're in the situation they're in. Maybe you change the coach to try and save your season and go into the playoffs, but the Browns aren't making the playoffs. We knew they weren't making the playoffs before the season. I don't see the point of sacking a coach midway through the season for the sake of doing it. If you're going to do it at the end of the year. So as much as I can joke that this is the head coach firing bowl, I will be surprised if either head coach does get fired. But going on to this game then, you both kind of mentioned it earlier, but just to get your thoughts. So what is your biggest concern going into this game? Is it the weather, Quinshon Judkins?
Run D.
Yeah.
The run D is awful. It's epically bad. Vidal from the Chargers is a third string back.
Yeah.
Gashed us for 7-8 yards a pop. We can't stop anyone, and people are getting pushed back, and they're not getting hit until they've made 8, 9, 10 yards in some instances. And whilst it's never been a thing in Miami. We've never had good run D for years and years. Marino struggled with having a bad run D, and it killed his championship chances on any number of years. And it seems to have carried on. But this is especially poor, and some of Weaver's calls have mystified me a little bit. And I like him. I think he's a good coach, but some of his calls have been very strange. It appears that, I don't know, maybe he's given up the ghost a little bit as well, and he's not happy. But we haven't got the players to stop the run at all. And when we do come into contact, the tackling is poor. I've lost count of the number of missed tackles that we've had this season. And when you've got the likes of Jordan Brooks up there as top 3 tacklers in the NFL, that's not a good sign.
No. The run defense for me as well, like you just said. Vidal last week, Rico Dowd all career year the week before. But I was thinking, like, Miami might actually look at this game though from a defense and think this could be a bit of a get right game. Rookie quarterback, third game in, poor O-line as you mentioned. So they might look at it and they might have a little optimism about that. But then in contrast, as will the Browns offense, they might think, well, this is a good game for us to sort of impose ourselves and get that run going and get a bit of positivity on the O-line. So Dylan Gabriel might, he's going to find some guys open on or depending on the weather and whether you can throw the ball or not.
Yeah.
But both units there are going to fancy it, I think. I think, on the other side then, I think I actually looked this up before this goes. I think Myles Garrett could have a single game sack record. Depending on where he's lined up, because the O-line for the Dolphins, Pat Paul, you mentioned it, Lee, he's one of your top three non-negotiables, and he's one of mine as well. He's been really good this year, but he's in a really bad unit. And I think Myles Garrett will fancy that as well. It's an intriguing game for sure. What's your thoughts?
I mean, they're the two matchups, but the Myles Garrett stuff, I mean, we've been saying the last 2 weeks, Myles, look at the Vikings O-line, Myles Garrett's going to eat him up. But the issue is when you are a pass rusher, you're not a quarterback. You haven't got the ball in your hands every single play. You can only affect what you can affect. And, if you're able to come up with a game plan, Tua does have a quick release. Yeah. If you can get the ball out quick, play that quick game, use Devin A-Chain, there are ways that you can somewhat negate a Myles Garrett. But as you said, if you're there dropping back in bad weather and you're trying to, as you said, sit behind that offensive line, then yes, this Browns defensive line is going to feast. It is the one saving grace of the Browns season so far. Many Browns fans remember the countless bad seasons that we've had over the years and how bad that you felt during those seasons. And you just, it was almost a grind just to watch these games. It does feel pretty similar now, but at least we get to watch Myles Garrett. At least we get to watch Carson Schwarzenegger, Malik Collins, all of the great players on the defense. It gives you some saving grace for this team. And it is the one thing that gives me any confidence going into this game because, I know a lot of Dolphins fans can sit there. You're worried about your run defense. That's more than understandable. You've got the 32nd ranked run defense in terms of yards given up. But as a Browns fan, it's just hard to have any confidence about this offense, no matter what defense we're going up against. So I think most Browns fans are going to sit here and say, again, like it has been every week, the route to winning this game is the defense. The defense has to play well. The defense has to keep Tua in check. The defense has to keep Devin A-Chain in check. And if they can do that, and the weather is bad, hopefully we can run the ball and have some success with that. But, I'm just not that confident about the Browns offense doing anything. Yes, the run blocking has been slightly better the last couple of weeks, mainly from the interior. But as I mentioned earlier, when you're starting, 6th, 7th string tackles, guys that are having to, who haven't played all season, they're coming in for this guy. There's just such a mess on the offensive line that it doesn't matter how good Quinshawn can be behind there. That is my biggest worry. But in terms of your pass defense, obviously going up against Dillon, we know there's probably not going to be too many passes in this game. Although Kevin Stefanski did have Dillon drop back 58 times against the Steelers. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see more than 3 dropbacks, as you mentioned earlier, Lee. But what's your view on the kind of, the Dolphins' pass defense, pass rush? I know obviously you have all the problems with the run defense, but where are you at with the pass defense?
Well, the back end, the secondary is woeful. They cannot cover. So, the likes of JP and Chubb and Chop Robinson have to get there. They have to be dominant. Chubb's not having that bad a year in terms of sacks, but again, his overall play, same with JP, I feel is inconsistent. So, if your line holds up, there'll be gaps. I think it all is predicated by the weather. It feels very much to me as if, Weaver does have that ability to change and adjust, and I've seen it a lot more last season than this. He seems very as if he's married to his game plan completely this year. Matthew, I don't know if you feel the same, but I haven't seen that second half adjustment that I saw last year. In Weaver's D, communication is massively important, and we haven't got the experience really outside of Minka, who's been in and out as well. So, and I think he's extremely frustrated with the players, some of his colleagues. They're just making basic fundamental errors mentally and physically, which you can't afford to make. And we've seen that once a team gets on a roll and understands that, then they pick us apart.
Yeah. We thought the secondary was where the weakness was going to be. So that's kind of like you mentioned earlier. If that's what you think, once that comes to fruition, you're not as let down. You expected it to be a poor secondary, but the pass rush has not been there. The run defense has been abysmal. So that's where the big disappointment for me has come in. But yeah, we've the defense last year played really well, and when the offense did step up, it stepped up. Games against I think it was the Bills away. They did there's various different games where the defense actually stepped up and helped us out of a hole, and they're just not doing that this year. And you look at the two corners. I think they paid $5 million between them. It's like you're just going to get that level of production back out of them. So just all round defense is really poor. And I think the Browns should be licking their lips for Sunday, really.
Yeah, I think both. I mean, you mentioned it's the whole get right game kind of thing. It's quite rare that both teams go into a game thinking, well, if we do this against this opponent, we could get this on a roll, and on the vice versa, the other team is saying, well, if we can do this, then we can get it on a roll. It's quite rare that you ever have two teams and two fan bases thinking that, but I think you're completely right to say that. You've got a Dolphins team with a really bad defense going up against the worst offense in the NFL. If there's any game to get right on defense, it's going up against the worst offense in the NFL versus obviously a Browns team with a good defense that has shown some cracks the last couple of weeks. They want to get in there. They want to kind of show that maybe those cracks were just cracks and they weren't kind of more underlining problems for this defense. But you mentioned your defensive coordinator's ability to change his game plan, and that's the one thing I think Browns fans have a criticism with Jim Schwartz, is that he is just unforgiving in how he approaches a game. He doesn't care. He is attack. Whether you're getting dashed open, he is going to continue to attack. I think last week we saw some cracks in that. You can work against that if you can, as I mentioned earlier, if you can get the ball out quick, if you can use their aggressiveness against them, there is definitely plays to be made there. But as you said, I think it's a weird one because the Browns is such a contrast of having the worst offense in the NFL and one of the better defenses in the NFL. I wouldn't go as far to say the best defense, but one of the better defenses. Whereas obviously Miami, don't get me wrong, as I mentioned earlier, the offense isn't as bad as the defense, but you're kind of middle of the pack offense, maybe back end middle of the pack, while also being really bad on defense as well. But you spoke about defense. Yes, it's going to be tough for Miami, but as I said, if there's any game to get right against, it's this Browns offense. Dylan Gabriel, he has struggled in 2 games. How much of that is going up against Brian Flores and Mike Tomlin, who have a combined, I think, 38-6 record against rookie quarterbacks? So, if there's any hope for Dylan going forward, then obviously we want to see an improvement in this game against this obviously defense. But moving on to your offense, as I said, you are going up against one of the better defenses in the NFL. Are you concerned about the offensive production? You guys have been able to score points this year, somewhat. I think you're 21st is it 21st? No, that's the Browns. You are 18th in points scored. So by no means one of the worst offenses in the league. But how do you kind of view this offense going up against the Browns defense?
Yeah, I think and again, we're kind of talking without knowing what the weather's going to be like, and that will dictate so much of this. But there's part of me that thinks we're going to continue to run A-Shane between the tackles, which is not brilliant with a 180-pound tailback, rather than getting him outside in that zone blocking scheme.
Yeah.
Ollie Gordon's shown flashes and moments that he can be the kind of ground and pound back, but again, nothing too significant or consistent to say he's going to come in and produce a 20-carry, 100-yard day. And that if the running game doesn't work and we're 10-0 down early, then it'll just be pass. And, that's, again, where we force ourselves then into this one-dimensional approach. It's coming, Garrett pins his ears back, and it's chaos in the backfield.
Yeah.
I'm taking the under. And I think, weather aside, I think, obviously, the Browns' strength is the defense. Our strength is the offense. That might cancel each other out. And then we spoke about the the other side as well. I think I'm alright with the offense. It has been okay this year, and it's kept us in games. Like we were winning for 46 seconds against the Chargers. We were 17-0 up against the Panthers. We had 2-minute drill against the Bills and the Patriots. It's been there. It's been alright. The playmakers have stepped up. Achan has been brilliant. Again, I completely will agree with Lee about Achan, Waddle, and Patrick Paul. They're my non-negotiables when it comes to trading players. Waddle has really stepped up. So I think we got some playmakers. I think Waller is going to have a uptick as well. So I think when it comes to that side of the ball, I do think Miami's offense will have enough to sort of cause some troubles. And it's going to be an interesting matchup, just like the other side is, but for different reasons, I think.
Yeah. I mean, as you can imagine, I'm hoping the weather is bad for this game. The Browns' passing attack is non-existent. And, on the defensive side of the ball, we're better against the run, which is, if you asked a Browns fan last year or told them this, they'd probably be quite surprised because, as good as the defense was the last couple of years, my biggest gripe last year was the run defense. This year, they've really shored that up. Obviously helps when you draft Mason Graham 5th overall. You bring in Malik Collins. Shelby Harris is still there. So the run defense has been really good for the Browns. But if you are able to beat this Browns defense, as I mentioned, you either through that short game and, kind of use their aggressiveness against them, or you have someone, DK Metcalf last week. Is it Jalen Waddle this week? Someone that can get over the top and stretch this defense. Denzel Ward, can't say enough good things about Denzel Ward, but he was at fault for that Vikings winning touchdown. He jumped on that route. He thought he was going to get an interception there. He was too aggressive, as I said. Browns defense using their aggressiveness, and that came against them. So, if I'm a Dolphins fan, that's what I'm going to be hoping for. Is that the weather's okay, not bad enough that we can't throw the ball and that any pass is just getting caught up in a tornado. And that obviously Jalen Waddle can stretch the field for you. And as you mentioned, Lee, with obviously Devon Achane running. Do you know how much misdirection you guys run? Because if you run a lot of misdirection, then that's a good thing, because that seems to be the biggest kind of struggle for this Browns defense is going up against that misdirection, which obviously with a fast guy like Devon Achane, I think you could use to your advantage against this defense.
So the big TD that he broke last week was from a misdirection play.
Yep.
Have we run as much this year? Surprisingly, no. I don't think. I'd have to check the stats, but I don't think we have.
Yeah.
We've had moments where we've done some really innovative stuff, but he still falls into this trap of getting Achane out in the flat, wide receiver screen, lose 3 yards, 2nd and 13. So then we've got to find 2 passes to get the first down.
Yeah.
At least he's not calling the 3rd and goal fade into the end zone anymore with Waller there, because that needed firing into the sun. So thankfully that's gone. But yeah, it's still very hit and miss, and it's disappointing because he basically said in the summer he'd gone away and locked himself away to improve the run game.
Yeah.
And there's been moments, and Achane's had a couple of 100-yard games and looked good, but in the main, it's still a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they lost the right guard and the right tackle in the first week, for the second week as well. So I think because Austin Jackson is really good in the run game, so that could have taken a hit as some of the reason of why the run game's not where we thought it was. But yeah, we thought we were going to have a decent run team, and it's just not come to fruition, unfortunately. I love Achane. I think he's like such a skill player, but I'm struggling to see why he's not getting Ollie Gordon a bit more game time. He's the bigger power back, 3rd and short and that sort of thing. He's still running Achane into those little gaps right in front of him. So yeah, a bit disappointing overall with the run game, but we'll see come Sunday, I guess.
I mean, my worry against Devon Achane, because if you look at this Browns run defense, I talked about the numbers are there. They've been one of the better run defenses. I mean, we held Derrick Henry to 23 yards, Chase Brown to 40 yards, et cetera, et cetera. But you look at the one running back we did struggle with this year, and that was Jahmyr Gibbs. And obviously, not saying that they're the same player, but similar style of player, that kind of more explosive back. Someone that if they've got green grass in front of them, then good night. So that is my concern. That is probably the biggest worry for me about this Dolphins offense is if Devin A-Chain just goes off. You mentioned it, Lee. He's had a couple of 100 games this season. You think about his time in with Miami. He's had a few of those games where you just think wow, and the stats obviously show that. So if I'm a Dolphins fan, that's going to kind of be would be where I'm thinking. Let's just get Devin A-Chain in space. Obviously, there's so many things that have to lead to that. You can't just you have to have the threat of the pass to obviously open up that space, and are you able to do that early on? That's obviously what we're going to find out. Or are you, as you said, Lee, going to be constantly putting yourself in 2nd and 13, something that the Browns offense find themselves in quite a lot of times, mainly because of the offensive line just not lining up or giving up penalties or whatever and ever. But we all know how important it is to stay ahead of the sticks in the NFL. If you're constantly putting yourself in negative yards, constantly putting yourself behind the sticks, it's just so hard in this game. But on Tua, you both kind of spoke about how maybe you're not quite as low on him as some other guys are. If the weather is bad, if it is one of those games where, we got the wind, we got the rain, how much do you trust Tua's arm in this game? Or do you think you have to get that run game going?
I think the run game would be, it would really help, obviously. That's been the criticism of him, isn't it? Poor weather, cold weather.
Yeah.
And he hasn't got a rocket arm. He hasn't got velocity to force those balls in. He's more of a anticipatory passer, and that's his game. And he's really, really good at that game. But when you take that away, then teams trying this season, I've seen it a lot. They're trying to get him out of the pocket, and then because they also know that he can't create with his legs, and that's where you just negate all. I think teams have sussed him out, to be honest. So he can do it. It depends on the Browns, sort of how they play him. If they can get him out of the pocket and make those, force him to do those off-the-cuff throws, that's where the interceptions come from. That's where you do be able to pick him off.
Yeah, completely agree. You've seen it where he's made those really bad throws, the killer throws against the Bills. Where he made that really bad error, and again that was outside the pocket. So, I really like Tua. I think he's one of the great kind of spot anticipatory throwers over the last 10, 15 years. He's incredibly accurate, and when that offense hums, it's damn near unstoppable at times because with Hill and Waddle. And it's such a shame because Waller looks like a real addition, especially in the red zone. As you can say, we've scored a decent amount of points. We should have won a couple more games than we have. I see him being successful elsewhere. I don't, I think there's some obvious discussions to be had. But I don't think we'll see him in Miami in a couple of years' time. I think he has one more year, and then they'll probably part ways. Yeah. And I think that's the appropriate contract point for them to part ways as well, where it doesn't absolutely kill them in cap. In terms of cap management. So I think he'll be here this year, he'll be here next, and then he'll be gone.
Yeah,
so.
And I mean, everyone wants to point to the comments that he made earlier in the week, and should he be making those comments in a press conference? Probably not, but I would actually defended to it slightly in that, in the end of the day, you need someone to take accountability. You need someone to put people on blast and to kind of put this awful season on their shoulders and go, this is why we're here and this is what we need to do to get out of it. So, I do kind of respect that from Tua. You mentioned Darren Waller. That, I suppose, I said Devin A-Chain is my biggest concern. I should probably throw Darren Waller in there. Even though I'll be honest with you guys, I completely forgot that he was even still in the NFL. Must have missed you guys signing Darren Waller because a couple of weeks ago when he got that touchdown, I thought, Darren Waller's back in the NFL. Wow, the rap career must have not gone too well. But, he's 4 touchdowns in 3 games. I've talked about the Browns defense. The biggest concern about this Browns defense is red zone defense. The numbers are actually terrible. How much of that is the offense just putting the Browns defense in awful positions in the red zone, turning the ball over, so the offense first snap is already in your red zone? Maybe that is so much to do with it. But we are giving up touchdowns in the red zone, and we do give up touchdowns to tight ends. So that's another great point. I think Darren Waller and Devon A-Chain are probably your two keys on offense to victory in this game against this Browns defense. But I'm excited for this game. It might be two bad teams, shall we say, but you've both mentioned it. I think there's areas where both teams can look to exploit the other team. Whether that's the Browns' run game against obviously your guys' defense, whether that's this could be a Jalen Waddle game, this could be a Devon A-Chain game. We never really know. But finally, on the game, to kind of get your thoughts on it before I'll get a prediction at the end. So don't worry about a prediction kind of thing. But I suppose in any way you can summarise, what do the Dolphins need to do to win this game?
Well, the D needs to show up. Tua, despite everything we've said about him, has won a couple of games and then seen the D throw them away. Against the Panthers and last week against the Chargers. So the D needs to show up. The run D especially needs to show up. They need to man up this week. They're going to get it shoved down their faces, and it's time they really stood up and were accountable and showed that there are actually decent players there who can make the stops, especially on third down. They just can't get off the field.
Yeah.
So it's long drives that chew up time. That the D is exhausted, and then the O comes out. There's a 3 and out, and then
straight back on.
They're straight back out there, and that's what's happened in certain games that's beaten us. So, run D, get the run. If the weather's bad, get the run game going. Convert third downs. The usual things that you've got to do in bad weather on the road.
Yeah.
And actually see a game out.
Yeah.
See the game out to the end, because this is, as I said earlier on, this is potentially a team that should be 3-3, and not 1-5. So, but as we've all said, bad teams find a way to lose. This team now needs to find a way to win.
Yeah, spot on. Run defense, especially, but overall defense. They have to hold up their end of the bargain by here, because the offense is putting us in positions to win games. There's plenty of examples which we've already named. So, like the defense overall just has to do their job. And like I said earlier, they'll fancy this game, I think. So, it might be a game for them to actually, get us out of, do the job and get us out of, get Cleveland with a win. So, we'll see.
I agree. I mean, Dolphins fans should be at least somewhat confident going into this game. I mean, you remember last season there was all that talk about, coming into Cleveland in, was it December or whatever that game was, and how are the Dolphins going to do in Cleveland in December, and all that home field advantage that Cleveland have at home apparently, and you guys absolutely smacked us in the mouth and just walked out of there with an easy win. Really, I would not be shocked if the same thing happens this week. But I also would not be shocked if this is, as you said earlier, this is a 3-0 game. The weather has such a big, obviously, impact on this game. That Cleveland Stadium, it's not just where it is, the kind of location where the wind comes into the stadium. It can create that kind of whirlwind effect. We've seen it, obviously, many times in Cleveland. But at the end of the day, home field advantage or not, it's not really for the Browns. You look at the record of the Browns at home, and I don't think you can really call that a home field advantage by any means. But from a Cleveland perspective, you both talked about it. It's the run game. They have to get Quinshon Judkins going in this game. They have to get into those heavy sets. You mentioned it, Lee. You could argue that maybe Miami have not been as physical as you would hope. They need to man up a bit. What can the Browns do? Let's go heavy. Let's go into those heavy sets. Let's have Aiden Huntington out there blocking, our defensive tackle. Let's have our tight ends out there blocking. We just need to get this run game going in any way that we can, because, if the Browns find themselves in a situation like last week where they're asking Dylan Gabriel to drop back 58 times, this is going to be a really, really ugly game. So for the Browns' perspective, as I said, got to get the run game going, and the defense has to hold up, especially with Devon A-Chain and Darren Waller in the red zone. But before I let you guys go, prediction. It can be a score prediction. It can be a whatever you want. You can just say Miami are going to win. I don't mind. But what is your prediction for this game?
I'll jump in with a weather impacted prediction and say that the Finns will escape Cleveland with a 13-10 win.
I wouldn't be surprised if Miami lost this game. If come 9 o'clock on Sunday, it wouldn't surprise me. But I think they're going to have a bit more playmaking ability on offense. I think, like I said a couple of times, I think the defense will fancy this game. I think low scoring still, 20-17 Miami.
So the Browns once again can't get over 17 points. I mean that's the blueprint. If you guys can score 20 points, you've won the game, because the Browns just can't score over 17 points. But I've only picked the Browns to win once this season. They've only won one game. Wasn't the game that I picked. But in my huddle prediction preseason, Lee, this was one of the few games that I picked the Browns to win. So I'm going to stick with it. As you said, obviously, weather obviously is going to have a big part on it. But, I think the Browns have so much riding on this game. There's so much negativity around this team right now that, I hope that the players, the coaching staff and everyone takes that as a motivation and can come out and scrape a win. But it's going to be close regardless. I'm going to go 17-10 to the Browns. That would be my prediction for this game. I don't think any of us are going to be betting the over. That is for certain. But before I let you guys finally go, please let everyone know who is listening where they can find you, and obviously, Lee, where they can find the work that you do on Huddle as well.
Yeah, cheers, mate. So on Twitter, my handle is @EastLeedsLad. And I'm the Miami Dolphins writer on @JoinTheHuddle and huddleuk.com. So find my work there. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm NFL Witty on Twitter. That's me.
Yep. I will link both their socials in the description of the video. I will also put the link to the Huddle website in the video as well. I had Nathan on a couple of weeks ago, Lee, the Packers writer, and he reminded me that I've actually not been promoting my own Huddle stuff. So go check out my Huddle stuff as well, guys, if you can. But any Dolphins fans out there, I really encourage you to go check out Lee's work. Does amazing work over at the Huddle. Go check out Matthew's Twitter. Great Twitter account to follow for any Dolphins fan, and so I do encourage that. But thank you both so much for giving me the time, coming on to talk about some Browns versus Dolphins. And as always, good luck in this game. I'm hoping for no injuries on either side, and get through this game as best as we can, but hopefully with a Browns win.